You think you're making decisions right now. You think you chose to watch this video, to sit where you're sitting, to think the thoughts running through your mind at this very moment. But what if I told you something that might shake everything you believe about yourself? What if every single choice you've ever made was already decided before you even knew you were making it? This isn't philosophy. This isn't some abstract theory. This is about how your mind actually works. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Let me show you something. Right now, as you're watching this, you're breathing. You didn't decide to breathe just now. It happened. Your heart is beating. You didn't choose that either. Your eyes are blinking. Again, not your conscious choice. Okay, you might say those are automatic functions. Fair enough. But let's go deeper. Think about what you had for breakfast this morning. Or if you skipped breakfast, think about why you skipped it. You probably feel like you made that choice, right? You weighed your options, considered your hunger, maybe thought about your schedule, and then decided. But here's what actually happened. Your body sent signals about its energy levels. Your memory pulled up images of available food. Your past experiences with those foods created preferences you weren't aware of. Your current emotional state influenced your appetite. The time you woke up determined how rushed you felt, and 1,000 other tiny factors all converged into what felt like your decision. By the time you consciously thought, "I'll have coffee and toast," the decision was already made. Your conscious mind just narrated a story about choosing, but the choosing had already happened in the background, in the parts of your mind you can't access. Scientists have proven this. They can predict what you're going to choose before you know you've chosen it. They watch your brain activity, and they see the decision forming in your neural patterns seconds before you become aware of having made a decision. Your consciousness arrives late to the party and takes credit for something that already happened. Think about the last time you said something you regretted. Maybe you snapped at someone or said something hurtful. Afterward, you probably thought, "Why did I say that? I didn't mean to." That's because you didn't choose to say it. Not really. The words came out, formed by your stress level, your past wounds, your tiredness, the specific way that person's tone triggered something in you. Your conscious self just watched it happen and then tried to make sense of it afterward. Or think about falling in love. Did you choose that? Did you sit down and logically decide, "I will now develop romantic feelings for this person"? Of course not. It happened to you. Chemistry, timing, your attachment patterns from childhood, what you needed at that moment in your life, the way they smiled. All of these created something that felt like the most personal choice in the world, but it chose you more than you chose it. Even right now, reading these words, you might be feeling resistance. No, you're thinking, "I make my own choices. I have free will." But notice this, you didn't choose to feel that resistance. It just appeared. You didn't decide to have that thought. It emerged from everything that makes you who you are, all the beliefs you've collected, all the experiences that shaped you. Here's what most people don't realize. Every single thing you think you are, your personality, your preferences, your beliefs, your desires, was built by factors you didn't control. You didn't choose your parents, your genetics, your culture, the time and place you were born, the experiences that shaped your early years when your brain was forming its patterns. All of that created the person who now thinks they're making free choices. Think about your habits. Why do you bite your nails, or check your phone constantly, or eat when you're stressed? You probably want to stop these things, right? You've probably tried, but they keep happening. That's because they're not really choices. They're patterns that run automatically, formed by repetition and reinforcement, and your conscious will has very little power over them. By the way, our shared space of light and awareness is on its way to 100,000 people. Thank you to everyone who subscribes and brings this moment closer. So if your choices aren't really yours, where do they come from? More importantly, where do your desires come from? Those deep wants that feel like the most intimate part of who you are. Let's start with something simple. Right now, you might want a glass of water, or maybe you don't. If you do want water, where did that want come from? Your body detected a drop in hydration, sent signals to your brain, and your brain created the sensation of thirst and the desire for water. You didn't choose to want water. The want appeared, created by your body's needs. But let's go deeper. What about your career ambitions? Your dream of traveling to certain places? Your desire for a relationship or to be alone? Your wish to be successful, admired, loved? Where do those come from? Here's what nobody wants to hear. Those desires were installed in you. By your parents, your culture, your friends, the movies you watched, the stories you heard, the pain you experienced, the pleasure you felt, the moments when you were praised, and the moments when you were rejected. Every single want you have is the result of conditioning. Layers upon layers of experiences that taught you what to desire. You think you want that car, that house, that body, that lifestyle. But why? Because somewhere along the way, you learned that having those things means something. Maybe it means you're successful. Maybe it means you're worthy. Maybe it means you've finally made it, that you're enough. But who taught you that? Who decided what success looks like? What worthy means? What enough feels like? Not you. You inherited these definitions. You absorbed them from a world that was already running when you arrived. A world full of stories about what matters and what doesn't, what's valuable and what's worthless. And those stories sank so deep into you that now they feel like your own authentic desires. Your desires change constantly, and you don't control how they change. 10 years ago, you might have wanted completely different things than you want now. You didn't sit down and decide to stop wanting those old things and start wanting new things. It just happened. Your circumstances changed, your brain changed, your body changed, and new desires emerged while old ones faded. Here's the uncomfortable part. Even your most spiritual desires, your want for enlightenment or peace or transcendence, those are conditioned too. You learned that these things are valuable. You heard about them, read about them, saw someone who seemed to have them, and a desire was born. That desire feels pure, feels like it's coming from your deepest self, but it's still a product of causes and conditions. Most of your suffering comes from identifying with these desires, from thinking they define you, from believing you'll only be happy when you get what you want. But if the desires aren't even yours, if they're just weather patterns moving through the space of your consciousness, why are you suffering over them? Watch a child. They want a toy desperately. They cry for it, convinced their happiness depends on having it. They get the toy. 5 minutes later, they've forgotten about it and want something else. Adults are the same, just with more expensive toys and more complicated stories about why this next thing will finally be enough. What if you could see your desires the way you see your heartbeat? Your heart beats, and you don't think, "I am beating my heart." You just notice that beating is happening. What if you could see desire the same way? Oh, there's a desire for approval. There's a want for comfort. There's a craving for meaning. Not "I want," but wanting is happening. So here we are. You've seen that your choices might not be as free as you thought. You've seen that your desires aren't really yours. And now you might be thinking, if I'm not in control, if there's no free will, then what's the point? Here's the paradox at the heart of everything. When you truly understand that you don't have free will, you become more free than you've ever been. Not free to choose differently than you're going to choose, but free from the suffering that comes from thinking you should be able to. Right now, most people are at war with themselves. They think they should be different than they are. They beat themselves up for their choices. They feel guilty about their desires. They're ashamed of their patterns. Why? Because they believe they could have chosen differently, that they should be able to just decide to be better and then be better. But you can't. And once you really see that you can't, the war ends. Not because you've given up on growth or change, but because you've stopped fighting against reality. Think about every time you've tried to change through sheer force of will. Maybe you tried to quit a bad habit, start a good one, be more patient, less anxious, more disciplined. How did that work? For most people, willpower lasts about 3 days. Then the old patterns come back, and you feel like a failure. But there's nothing wrong with you. You were just using the wrong tool. Willpower is trying to override all the factors that created your pattern in the first place. It's like trying to stop a river with your bare hands. So what's the alternative? Change happens through seeing, not through choosing. When you truly see why you do what you do, when you understand the mechanics of your patterns without judgment, the pattern begins to transform on its own. Let's say you get angry easily. The old approach would be to feel bad about it, to try to control your temper through willpower. And it doesn't work. The new approach is different. You start watching your anger without judgment. You notice what triggers it. You see how it builds in your body. You become curious about it instead of at war with it. And the anger starts to lose its grip. Not because you forced it to go away, but because seeing it clearly changes your relationship to it. When you see that you're not in control, you stop wasting energy pretending that you are. You stop exhausting yourself with guilt and shame. You start paying attention to what actually creates change. Your environment, your habits, your influences, the people around you, the information you consume. You can't choose to be different through willpower, but you can notice what factors create your behavior, and you can sometimes adjust those factors. Awareness itself becomes a cause in the chain of causation. Here's a practical example. You can't decide to stop being addicted to your phone, but you can notice that having your phone next to your bed means you'll scroll for hours before sleep. You can put the phone in another room. The factors change, so the behavior changes. There's another layer to this freedom. When you see that people don't have free will, that everyone is acting out patterns created by their history and biology, something shifts in how you see others. The anger you felt toward people who hurt you starts to soften. Not because you're trying to forgive them, but because you see that they couldn't have done otherwise. This doesn't mean you let people mistreat you. It just means you stop taking things so personally. You see that the person who was cruel to you was acting from their own pain and conditioning. This seeing brings a peace that forgiveness through willpower never achieved. You also stop judging yourself so harshly. You see that the mistakes you made, the things you're ashamed of, all of that was caused, too. You were doing the best you could with the awareness you had at the time. You couldn't have done differently. This is what liberation looks like. Not the freedom to choose anything you want, but freedom from the illusion that you should have that freedom. Freedom from the war with yourself. Freedom from the guilt and shame of not being able to just decide to be perfect. You're still going to make choices, or rather, choices are still going to happen through you. Life doesn't stop. But you're no longer imprisoned by the belief that you're failing when you can't control everything through sheer will. There's a deep relaxation that comes with this. A letting go of the exhausting effort to be someone other than who you are in this moment. And paradoxically, that relaxation often allows you to become more than you were. Not through striving, but through the natural unfolding that happens when you stop fighting against yourself. This understanding changes your whole life, even though nothing external might change at all. You still go to work, still have relationships, still face challenges, but you move through it all differently, with more ease, with more compassion for yourself and others, with less suffering over things you can't control. And maybe, just maybe, you start to see that the question, "Do I have free will?" was the wrong question all along. The real question is, can I be aware? Can I see clearly? Can I stop fighting reality and start living in alignment with how things actually work? The answer to those questions is yes. Not because you choose it through free will, but because awareness is already here, already available, already transforming everything just by seeing it. If this video changed something in you, write in the comments, "I see it now." Write it as your promise to stay awake to this understanding. Nobody,